Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Daniel here with another video looking at the A to Z of aircraft of the Second World War. So in the previous videos we've looked at the Avro Anson, Bristol Blenheim, the Focke-Wulf Condor, the Douglas Dauntless. So all of these aircraft have had a name which begins with the relevant letter. For E we're doing something slightly different, mainly because I couldn't immediately think of an aircraft which began with E. So what we are looking at today with the letter E is the Messerschmitt Bf-109E, which was also known in German service as the Emil.
Alongside the Focke-Wulf FW-190, the Messerschmitt Bf-109 formed the backbone of the Luftwaffe's fighter force. The Bf-109 first saw operational service in 1937 during the Spanish Civil War and was still in service at the end of the Second World War in 1945. When it first appeared, the Messerschmitt 109 was one of the most advanced fighters in the world, with an all-metal monocoque construction, a closed canopy and a retractable undercarriage, and was powered by a liquid-cooled inverted V12 aero engine. The Bf-109 was sometimes referred to as the Me-109 by Allied aircrew and by some within the Third Reich, even though this was not the official German designation. For more information on this, please view my video on Messerschmitt aircraft designations, to which there is a link in the description below. The first version of the Bf-109 was the A variant, with the Bf-109B1 being the first variant to enter serial production. The Bf-109B was followed by the beginning of production of the short-lived Bf-109C in the spring of 1938. The Bf-109C was in turn followed by the Bf-109D, which was the standard version of the Bf-109 at the outbreak of war in September 1939. The A, B, C and D variants all saw minor refinements to the armament, engine and to the strengthening of the wings. The first major redesign of the Bf-109 occurred with the Bf-109E, known as the Emil, which entered production in late 1938. To improve on the performance afforded by the 515 kW Duomo 210 engine, the larger and longer Daimler-Benz DB601A engine was used, which yielded an extra 223 kW at a cost of an additional £400 worth of weight. A much larger cooling area was needed to disperse the extra heat generated by the DB601, and this led to the first major redesign of the basic airframe. This saw the enlargement of the existing nose-mounted radiator to sufficiently cool the engine. Enlarging the existing nose-mounted radiator sufficiently to cool the engine would have created extra weight and drag, negating some of the performance gains afforded by the increased power. Therefore, it was decided to move the main radiators to the undersurfaces of the wings immediately outboard of the junction of the wing root and wing panel, just forward of the trailing edge's inner ends, leaving the oil cooler under the nose in a small streamlined duct. The new radiator position also had the effect of counterbalancing the extra weight and the length of the DB601, which drove a heavier three-bladed propeller. To incorporate the new radiators, the wings were almost completely redesigned and reinforced, with several inboard ribs behind the spar being cut down to make room for the radiator ducting. Because the radiators were mounted near the trailing edge of the wing, coinciding with the increased speed of the airflow accelerating around the wing camber, cooling was more effective than that of the Duomo-engined 109s, albeit at the cost of extra ducting and piping, which was vulnerable to damage. In addition to this, the lower undercarriage also had the potential to throw up mud and debris on wet airfields, which had the potential to clog the radiators. In order to test the new DB601A engine, two prototypes designated the V14 and the V15 were built, each of which differed in their armament. While the V14 was armed with two 7.92 MG17s above the engine and one 20mm MGFF in each wing, the V15 was fitted solely with two MG17s mounted above the engine. Following flight tests, the V-14 was considered to be more promising, and a pre-production batch of 10 aircraft designated the Bf-109A0 were ordered. These aircraft were followed by batches of the Bf-109A1 and Bf-109A3. Batches of both variants would be shipped to Spain for evaluation and would see combat during the final phases of the Spanish Civil War. The Bf-109A1 production version kept the two 7.92mm MG-17s above the engine and included two more in the wings. Later, many Bf-109A1s would be modified to the A3 armament standard. The Bf-109A1B was a small batch of A1s that became the first operational Bf-109 fighter bomber or Jagd bomber, usually abbreviated to Yabo. These aircraft were fitted with an ATC 500 bomb rack, enabling them to carry one 550-pound bomb or four 110-pound bombs. The A1 was also fitted with the reflex visor gun sight. Communications equipment took the form of the Funkgerät 7 radio set, which was a short-range radio apparatus effective to ranges of between 30 to 35 miles. A total of 1,183 Bf-109A1s would be built, of which 110 were of the A1B variant. The Bf-109A1 was followed by the Bf-109A2 variant. Only very limited numbers of the A2 variant were built, for which the V20 prototype served as a basis. The Bf-109A2 was armed with two wing-mounted and one engine-mounted MG-FF cannon, which gave considerable trouble in service, as well as two synchronised MG-17 Cowling machine guns. In August 1940, two Staffel of JG-27 could be found operating the Bf-109A2. To improve the performance of the Bf-109A, the last two-wheel prototypes designated the V16 and V17 were constructed. The V16 and V17 received some structural improvements and a more powerful armament over their predecessors. Both prototypes were to form the basis of the Bf-109A3 version. The Bf-109A3 was armed with two MG-17s above the engine and one MG-FF cannon in each wing. A total of 1,276 Bf-109A3s would be constructed, which included 83 A3A export versions. The Bf-109A3 was replaced by the Bf-109A4, with many airframes being upgraded to A4 standard starting at the beginning of the Battle of Britain. The Bf-109A4 was different in some small details to preceding variants of the Bf-109A series, most notably by using the modified 20mm MG-FF-M wing cannon and having improved head armour for the pilot. With the MG-FF-M, it was possible to fire a new and improved type of explosive shell called the Meingeschloss, or mine shell. The Meingeschloss was made using drawn steel instead of being cast, as was the usual practice. This resulted in a shell with a thin but strong wall, which had a larger cavity in which to pack a much larger explosive charge than was otherwise possible. The new shell required modifications to the MG-FF's mechanism due to the different recoil characteristics, hence the MG-FF-M designation. The cockpit canopy was also revised to an easier-to-produce squared-off design, which also helped improve the pilot's field of view. This canopy, which was also retrofitted to many Bf-109A1s and A3s, was largely unchanged until the introduction of a welded, heavily framed canopy on the G-series in the autumn of 1942. The Bf-109A4 would form the basis of all further Bf-109A development. Some A4 and later models received a further improved DB601N high-altitude engine. Such aircraft were known as the Bf-109A4N. Owing to the priority being given to equipping Bf-110s with this engine, one fighter group was converted to operate the Bf-109A4N beginning in July 1940. The Bf-109A4 was also available as a fighter bomber, with equipment very similar to the previous Bf-109A1B. The fighter bomber versions were known as the Bf-109A4B when fitted with a DB601A engine, and as A4BN when fitted with the DB601N engine. A total of 561 Bf-109A4s would be constructed. Broken down, they were constructed as 250 A4, 211 A4B, 15 A4N, and 20 A4 BN. The Bf-109 A5 and A6 were both reconnaissance variants of the Bf-109 with a camera installation located behind the cockpit. The Bf-109 A5 was a reconnaissance variant of the Bf-109 A3, while the A6 was a reconnaissance variant of the A4N. 29 Bf-109 A5s would be constructed alongside 9 Bf-109 A6s. The Bf-109 A7 rectified this problem, as it was the first Bf-109 subtype to be able to carry a drop tank, usually the standardised Luftwaffe 300 litre capacity unit mounted on the centreline rack underneath the fuselage. When fitted with a drop tank, the Bf-109 A7 had a range which was increased to 820 miles. Fuel from the drop tank was pumped into the internal fuel tank via a large fuel line that ran up and along the inside starboard wall of the cockpit, with a clear sight glass located in the fuel line's main span so that the pilot could easily see the flow of fuel and know when the tank was empty. Alternatively, a bomb could be fitted and the A7 could be used as a Yarborough fighter bomber. Previous Bf-109A subtypes were progressively retrofitted with the necessary fittings for carrying a drop tank from October 1940. Early versions of the A7 were fitted with the DB601A engine, while latter production variants were fitted with the DB601 engine with improved altitude performance. Aircraft fitted with the DB601 engine were designated as the Bf-109 A7N. A total of 438 Bf-109 A7s would be constructed.
Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more updates, like and share. You can also help to support the channel at Patreon. Details are in the description box below.